PA Football News. We're here today with Jackie Young, the athletic director at Towanda, former coach at Athens, and former student at Towanda. And we're going to ask a bunch of questions and get to know him and find out what makes him tick. Jackie, welcome back to Towanda. It all started here at Towanda. Your dad was the coach. How was it growing up being the son of a legendary coach in the area?
Well, first, Lindsay, thanks for having me. Listening to some of your other interviews, I don't know if I'll compare to some of these guys. You had Coach Quigg, which I've watched that interview a couple times, and that was legendary. And I think you shared with me afterwards, your whole goal of doing stuff like this is that, maybe in 20 or 30 years, somebody else will watch this video. So kudos to you, because that's really cool.
Thank you, I appreciate it, thank you.
But, I wasn't born in Towanda. My family moved here. My father was hired as a football coach and a teacher. And, when he came here, he told my mother he'd be here 2 or 3 years and he'd move on. And he had already been around a little bit to a couple different places trying to find his place. And then, that 2 or 3 years turned into 27. And, I'm not going to say it was different, but I think communities were a little different back then when it came to football.
Yeah.
Northern Tier fans that might listen to this, when he was hired in 1970, all the school board cared about was that he beat Sayre. That was it.
And, we've come a long way since then.
We've come a long way since then, and that's nothing against Sayre. Just things change and things have come. But me ending up as a 2-year-old, I think, in Towanda, PA, was basically probably where it all started for me football-wise, because that's all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Come to Towanda, what a great community. Tight-knit. If people think our stadium right now at Towanda is unique, and it is, I think it's one of the most beautiful places there.
Absolutely, I agree.
They should have seen some games back in the day up at Old Memorial Park, as you can attest to.
The showers up there.
I just talked to a gentleman a couple weeks ago, a coach. He's coaching a little bit now, but he was much older, and he said, I still think we lost 5 or 6 balls that were kicked over the bank.
Absolutely.
It was a little different time and era, but with my father being a coach, and I've coached a long, long time,
mm-hmm.
and I used to think, I'll coach as many years as my father, and I didn't get there, and not that I'm disappointed in any ways, but when you do it for that long, a lot of things happen, but that's, I coached for a guy that, he was old school for sure. He coached some classic teams here in Towanda,
mm-hmm.
some really, really good teams before they had playoffs.
Yep, and some great, great athletes.
Oh, unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. He had athletes that played at, every level, and a lot of things. I think one thing a lot of people didn't know about my father was he coached a lot of sports.
Mm-hmm.
He coached a little. He coached a little baseball. He was a big track and field coach. He even coached some basketball in his day. And he wasn't a basketball guy, so so some of those things are neat. But I think my family ending up in Towanda was a pretty cool thing.
Absolutely. Looking back on it now that you're 50-some years old, you really have to thank where you've come from because of who you are and because of you growing up in the Towanda area. It made you who you are, and when you went other places, you still had Towanda in you. You know what I mean?
100%, 100%. And I think that would go for anybody that, where you grew up and what's your hometown. I mean, things happen in full circles.
Mm-hmm.
And, my wife and I went, I drug her around a few different places. And, as we started having a family, it was, all right, where do we want to end up?
Yep.
And it always came back to, let's just go home.
Yeah.
Let's just go home.
So when you were growing up with your dad, you were the water boy, the ball boy. and then you became a football player in high school. How was it playing for your dad as a player? What was his expectations of you?
Wow. You know, I truly to this day, I'm not sure what his expectations were, but he was hard on me. I mean, he was hard on me. But the good thing was, when we walked in our front door, my mother made sure
you were the son again, not the player.
Absolutely, 100%. And but he was tough on me. So, like, exactly what were his expectations? I think his expectations with me were no different than any of his other players. He was just going to get the best out of me. And I mean, he might have beat me up a little bit on the field. Like, I think he, you know,
lead by example kind of thing.
Yeah, and I joke that he led me across the middle a few too many times, but no, I think his expectations for me as a football player were no different than any of his other players.
Yeah.
So, you know, but Mom made sure that when we walked in that door, we were back to
dad and son.
Dad and son, absolutely.
When I remember when I played, you went off to college because you were 3 years older, 3 years ahead of me. And when you came back, I think you went to Wilkes, right?
I went to Wilkes my first year.
Yeah, and you came back and you had bruises all over your arms and your fingers were all hurting. And you said, man, the way they throw the ball down there is nothing like high school.
It was a different gig, man. And you know, and I went to a Division III program that, you know, at the time was having successes. And believe it or not, I know I haven't watched it yet, but I know you interviewed Mike Pearson. You know, Mike Pearson and I met each other the Saturday before we entered Wilkes University at the Towanda South Williams Sports Scrimmage.
Wow.
And that was the first time we had met. I mean, we had scrimmaged against each other, but we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And that was where Mike Pearson and I started a relationship. But yeah, I went to Wilkes. You know, and it's funny. Like I know we talked a little bit before getting on live here, but you know, that was where I learned. Like I'm not even sure I would have gone to college if I didn't have the opportunity to play. You know, so you know that's kind of one of the things as I've gotten older that, you know, if that's a reason for a kid to pursue a secondary education or whatever it might be, is to keep competing, go for it. Because I'm not sure as a kid, like I don't know where I would have ended up. Maybe the military, I'm not sure. But you know, I learned real quick that I'm not so sure my body was going to be able to take playing at the college level.
Yeah.
So that's when I transferred to Bloomsburg, and I was kind of part of the Bloomsburg program, and that's when I decided, you know what, playing just isn't for me. And quite frankly, that was when I made the decision to get into education, because I loved the game, and I thought, all right, you know, obviously I'm not going to make it to the NFL and do those kind of things, but how can I stay involved in the game? And probably the best answer for me was to become a teacher and to become a coach. So I went to Bloomsburg, and that's where I graduated from college, was Bloomsburg.
And then when you got out of college, where did you go? Where was your first, like when you were in college, did you decide, man, I want to be a football coach?
Yeah, well, really, when I made the decision to get my teaching degree, that was when I decided, like, I'm going to be a teacher and a coach. That's what I wanted to do. And I think there was a period of time that I had aspirations of coaching in college, and there were some changes with grad assistants at that time. So then I just pursued a job, and I was fortunate at the time to get a job right at Athens. Gene Cerruti was the middle school principal, and he hired me, and you know, what a great leader he was. And I taught at Athens for a couple of years, coached football, and that was when I made the decision, like, all right, I was young, I was single, and I thought I don't want to be 50-some years old and live my entire life in Bradford County. So that's when I went out and I explored a little bit. I went to Hershey. I taught and coached in Hershey at the public school in Hershey, Derry Township School District, and you know, and again, that's probably where, you know, me getting tied into with just different people really began, because I coached for a legend there in Gump May, and Gump was an old lifer from Milton Hershey. He spent his entire life at Milton Hershey as a student.
So you were the coach at Hershey, not Milton Hershey. I
was not at Milton Hershey. I was at Hershey High School, the public school, which is Derry Township School District. A lot of people don't know that. They mix that up all the time.
Because for anybody that's never been to Milton Hershey High School, like there's a far cry from Milton Hershey High School to Hershey High School.
Absolutely.
Like Milton Hershey has millions and millions of dollars, and Hershey High School has thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. Hershey High School's not bad. I mean, Hershey's a beautiful area, and I think a lot of people know that. But that's I was Gump's defensive coordinator, and he's just a legendary guy. Super important to me in my life. His birthday's the day after mine. I just called him last week and had a conversation, and so I went there, and and it was the perfect location.
Mm-hmm.
The people I got to meet, working for a guy like that it wasn't my father or it wasn't anybody in the northern tier, and man, did I learn a lot. I learned how to. I really learned how to coach.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was where I really learned how to, like, all right, if I'm going to be the defensive coordinator, these are all the things I got to do, and I credit Coach May for that, because he really taught me a lot about being an independent coach, but yet at the same time using every resource around you. So Coach May is a classic. Anybody that knows Gump is he's a treasure. No different than somebody like Coach Quigg. He's just a treasure. And what an experience I had there.
That's awesome. Then, how long were you a coach at Hershey before you decided, we need to get somewhere else?
Well, I was at Hershey. I wasn't in a real hurry to become a head coach, but there were some opportunities that kept kind of arriving. Kept popping up here and there, and a unique opportunity opened up. I applied for it, and I was hired as the head football coach at Tamaqua High School. And at the time, Tamaqua had the second longest or the second longest losing streak in the state of Pennsylvania. And, but it was the heart of the coal region.
Oh, yeah.
And it was coal region football. And, I knew some people in the area. It's right down the road from Mount Carmel. You got Marion Catholic. You're right there in the heart of Schuylkill County and the coal region football.
Yep.
So I took the challenge, and it was a great time, unbelievable time. Again, met some people that were unbelievable. Probably the funniest thing, or one of the most unique things about that was, I took that job and I jumped in, man, and we got to open up. We're like the second longest losing streak in the state of Pennsylvania, and we got to open up with defending state champ Mount Carmel. So it was like, it was almost like just running into a wall. We worked so hard all summer long, and we had great kids. Like, there's still some of the kids from that team that I stay in touch with. Kids, they're not kids, they're all grown-ups. But, we had a great senior class that first year I was at Tamaqua. And, it was like running into a brick wall the first week.
Oh,
and,
yeah, buzzsaw.
Just some of the stories. And, Christ, we could sit here and tell stories like, the unique, you take a unique thing of we had to play Mount Carmel, defending state champions, week 1. We also started the game by getting a flag because our band was late getting off the field. So I remember thinking to myself, what did I get myself into here? Like holy cow, not only, now our band's late getting off the field, but it was all good, and I spent 3 years at Tamaqua, and I wouldn't trade them in for nothing. It was just a great time, and then it was, now I was starting to have a family,
Yep.
and that was, honestly, it really wasn't a big decision. I'd done my time there and loved it, but it was just time to move on, and now kind of, all right, where are we going to settle our feet and raise our family, and really when it push came to shove, it was like, let's just go home.
Yep.
And that's when we did, and that's, I credit Tom Salpino, who when I left Athens, he was the principal, and he told me when I was ready to come back to let him know, and I applied for a number of different jobs in the area, and Athens was just the perfect fit.
Yep.
And and when I went back to Athens, coaching at that point in time, coaching just kind of took a back seat. Like it wasn't the most important thing in my life at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't think coaching football was ever again like the most important part of my life. You know, maybe there were times when when I was single, but it really gave me a whole new perspective on how I wanted to be as a coach, whether I was an assistant coach or a head coach. And so I did some things a little differently from that point on.
Now, looking back at your career from that point and from the point today, like being a football coach, you impact so many young men's lives. Whether you intend on doing that or not, you interact with these young kids and you kind of put them in a direction of where to go and to be better human beings. Whether you intend that or not, that's
Sure.
And the byproduct of football is the score of the game. Like all the stuff, because 80% of it is practice, travel, preparation, preseason, all that stuff for 20% of playing the game of football.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I don't even know if you call it 20%, but now that I'm not sure I'm getting ahead of where you want to go, but I retired from teaching and coaching, and if there's that one thing I miss the most, it's Friday night. It's game time.
Yeah.
That's when your blood gets flowing, and I don't care if you're 50-some years old or 15. That's when your blood flows.
Oh, yeah.
And anybody that's coached or played knows that. So, my biggest thing, Lindsay, coaching, which again I learned from a lot of different people, was, when it came to football coaching, I wasn't that most innovative guy. I think anybody that played for me would tell you that, I just focused on the little things when it came to football. But when it came to life, my ultimate goal was just, if young man could get finished in my program and correlate one thing that he got out of football to real life, that was a win for me.
You did your job.
So those were the kind of wins that I kept track of.
Yeah.
It was those things. I always preach to our kids that the product we put on the field and the product we are off the field was what we had to be most proud of. And you and I talked about schools like Southern Columbia, things like that. When you play a game, there's not too many people that win them all.
No.
So getting beat is part of playing a game.
Yeah.
And so if I could use any of that kind of stuff as a lesson, I'm not sure every kid that ever played for me loved me, but if I had a kid come back to me 5 years later or 15 years later and say, Coach, I got to tell you this, I always remember this. I always remember game times this, or the things you used to say here, then it was a win for me. And that's what I cared about the most. And, you talk about the kids that play for you, and it's like, the kids that played for me, if you talk about careers, it's like every career imaginable, I bet you I had a kid go into, whether, doctor, lawyer, businessman, whatever it might be, they're out there. And the ones that communicate with me at times and say, Coach, I'll never forget this.
Yeah.
Then that makes me go, all right, I did something pretty well.
And it still gives you goosebumps.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
All right, so you're back at Athens, and you're the head. Did you become the head coach? Did they hire you back as the head coach?
Not right away, no. I served as an assistant for 2 years, which was fine because, like I said, when I came back, I wasn't even sure, where I wanted to go, where I wanted to head coaching wise, just because there was so much going on in my life. I had 3 children. We were moved back to the area to be around family, and there's just a lot going on. So it was 2 years. I became the head coach at Athens in 2001. So I moved back there in '99, and in 2001 I became the head coach, and that just we kind of had some success right away, and for the most part we kept that success rolling, and but it was all about kids, and if there was one thing I learned, another thing I learned from a couple of the legendary coaches that I tried to learn from, it was, my father used to always say, just surround yourself with good people. And I will tell you, at Athens, like my assistant coaches at Athens, every year I was there, I had great guys, like just great guys. And it didn't matter what their football level was or their football IQ, they were just great guys. So you knew they cared, and you knew they were going to be all about the team. It wasn't, that was our other thing, was it's never going to be about individual accomplishments, things like that, and that's what I cared about the most. And, the guys I had coaching with me were just incredible. You don't coach somewhere for 20 plus years without great people around you.
Yep.
I had the same defensive coordinator for 20 years, Dan Keller. I had Tim Davidson, Keith Klein, Al Worshel. Al did so many things for us. It was incredible between his coaching, and we always used to tease him that he was the greatest long snapping coach in America. But he did so much for us, whether it be on the field, technology wise, and the Kleins ran our booster club forever, and we just had some great people around us, and that's why we were successful. And then you top it with just great kids, and that's why I was able to have the tenure at Athens I had. I was smart enough to put good people around me.
Yeah, and you mentioned surround yourself with good people. That's no different than life.
Absolutely.
In life, you want to surround yourself with great people because it resonates around,
And I would say those things to the kids, like, no matter even now, I'll tell a young kid, like, tell me who you're hanging with, and I'll tell you what kind of character you have. And those are the kind of lessons that my goal of getting across to young kids was just, I'm a big character guy. Character was real important to me, and then hard work. And that's what coaching was all to me about. But, and then it goes above and beyond that with, the people I've met in my career. Coach Quig's such a huge person in my life. He was here when I moved here when I was 2 years old. And yet he's still on that sideline every Friday night. He's an incredible man.
He's an amazing human being.
It's kind of like some of these people in the Northern Tier, I have such great relationships with them. Even the other coaches. And, Tom Dickinson, who coached at North Penn forever, great guy. Craig Dawsey, the heart and soul of this program for so many years. So, I just tried to be around good people. And when you surround yourself with good people, good things happen. So.
Now, what year did your dad die?
1996. Was it 96?
So you weren't around here at that point?
No, I lived in Tamaqua.
Okay.
I lived in Tamaqua.
You remember when you got that call?
Yeah. A crazy story was, my wife doesn't like the story because my wife doesn't like to fly, but I just landed in Las Vegas for a friend's wedding. And, what a crazy period of time, like the next 18 hours or however long it was. My dad was in fairly good health, and he was actually, his bags were packed. He was going to the state football championships, and that's when my father passed away. So, it was crazy times, and he was still coaching at the time. We were both head coaches in '96. And he was working harder as a football coach than anybody could ever imagine. He was 59 years old, and he was working harder as a high school football coach than people could probably even realize. And I begged him to come coach with me. Quite frankly, I knew that was never going to happen. But I would have loved it. I would have. How cool would that have been to have my father come be my defensive coordinator or something? But that's how that worked. And so that when events like that happen in your life, they change you.
Absolutely. They're the two worst days in your life is when your mother and your father die. And I don't care who you are.
Absolutely.
They're the two worst days of your life
Absolutely.
ever. And the thing to remember that no matter what happens is the sun's going to come up tomorrow no matter who's here and who ain't. And that's a way to put it so people can understand it. But at the end of the day, no matter how you slice it, it sucks. Somebody was here and now they're not. I mean, and when it's your parent, it just blows your mind and it just sucks all the more.
I couldn't say it any better, Lindsay. we talk about this. My wife and I talk about that stuff all the time. Like, we're gonna get up tomorrow morning and put our feet on the ground.
Yep.
You know, you got some bad breaks. Again, lessons in life. You know, you get some bad breaks.
Yep.
You just got to get up in the morning and put your feet on the ground and
Mhm.
get after it the next day.
Yep.
And that's, you know, I'm pretty biased to the game of football.
Mhm.
I'm pretty biased to the sport of wrestling.
Yeah.
But that's what's great about sport and about competition is it teaches you those kind of lessons
Mhm.
that, like, you know, the value of those lessons, you know, are just, there's no price tag you
Yep.
can put on them. So, you know, again, anything that a young person can learn from their experience in athletics and competition, you know,
How to overcome adversity.
absolutely.
Because if you're on a 10-0 team every year, what do you learn really? You learn very minimal. It's the year you go 1-9 where you really find out a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. I've told that to people over and over and over and over again. Those, you know, at Athens, we didn't have many, but we had a few. You know, we had a 4 and 6 year. We had back-to-back 2 and 8 years,
Mhm.
and they were back-to-back. And the first year we were 2 and 8. Into the second year we were 2 and 8. That second year 2 and 8 might have been my best year as a staff. The best year we coached
Mhm.
was being 2 and 8 because of where we went from the first week of August to the last week of October. It might have been our best year coaching, and I think a lot of coaches would tell you that.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches would say, spot on.
Yep.
I mean, not that winning seasons are easy,
Mhm.
but, you know, I can tell you this, like, you know, if I lost a tough football game, I was going to double my film time the next week
Yep.
as a football coach.
Yep.
And, you know, that's just the way to me, I believed it. I was going to, you know, try to figure out how to be better.
Yep.
So if kids can learn those lessons,
Yep.
and I just can't reiterate it enough, and you know, I'm no, you know, I do not look at myself as a legendary guy. I just look at myself that has a lot of passion, and you know, some of the people I've been fortunate enough to be around is the whole key.
Yep. So you're at Athens, and then over the next 20 years, you come to the end of your career, and what makes you decide, you know something, I'm just going to hang it up and retire?
Well, I mean, if Craig Stage, the superintendent, was here, he'd tell you exactly how it went. But, you know, I was fortunate enough to retire. You know, blessed to be where I was at, and blessed under the, you know, the teacher's contract that I was in. That, you know, I did 32 years of education in the state of Pennsylvania, and I was blessed to have the opportunity to retire. I wasn't retiring to go live in Florida and put my feet up in a recliner or go play golf. That's not me. I knew there were other things to do. You know, I wanted to, you know, I wanted to be able to control a little bit more of what I was doing. And when I first had my superintendent's interview to retire, you know, his first question was, "You're not leaving football, are you?" And I told him no. And then
we're going to get into wrestling in a little bit.
Yeah.
But when me and Matt Herring seen you down at wrestling, we questioned you a little bit. And
Yep.
you're like, nope, I'm going to coach for at least 1 more, maybe 2 more years.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, I read in the paper, Jack Young's retiring.
It was, you know, so Lindsay, it was, you know, I saw you and Matt at that state tournament. That's where I made my decision.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was like, you know, I told I had my superintendent's meeting in January, and just like how I had operated for the previous 22 years just kind of kept creeping in, and it was like, I just couldn't see myself with that change. You know, I couldn't see myself not in the building every day, all day long. You know, I was retiring from teaching to make some changes in my life, and I know how I operate. If I was going to coach football that next year, I was still going to be in that building probably 8 a.m.
Yeah.
I was still going to be there. Now I was going to be a full-time coach, which you know, I couldn't change the way I operated. I couldn't change how I was.
Yeah.
And it just kind of kept creeping on me. And my wife, who did not pressure me at all, her and I kept talking about it. And I honestly, there were some fears of not being who I wanted to be, and I just felt like, I kept putting those things in my head that I wanted to make some life changes, and what a perfect opportunity to do so. And I made that decision at the state wrestling tournament, and what ease I really came to. Like, I was so at ease with my decision. Some changes in my life happened immediately, and like the spring and summer were incredible. I never realized what a summer was
Without football.
for a teacher.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes teachers take a hard time about summer vacations and stuff like that, but I never truly knew what a summer was like as a teacher because I was coaching. My summers were booked with football all the time.
Yep.
My wife knew if we were going to go on a summer vacation, she had to have that planned by March or April, so that I had my summer planned out. And there was just an ease about it, and I know it was the right decision. I love the game of football. That first year, Pat McDonald got me doing some radio.
Yeah.
Had a blast. Had an absolute blast doing it, and then comes this.
So how did this come along?
Well, it was just it was just a matter of Paul Lance. Paul was here. I think Paul was here a dozen years, maybe more than that.
Yeah.
And I think his wife was retiring. Deneen was retiring as an school administrator, and I think Paul just had his fill too. And he was walking away. And again, I wasn't retiring from coaching and teaching to put my feet up and relax. I had plans to do some things, and I'm still getting to do those things. And this kind of happened, and because of the way Tawana does their AD position, it kind of was a really easy kind of fit for me because of where I was. And my wife really, really encouraged it because she knew where I was, and mentally, and where I was in my life, and it's I interviewed, I applied, I interviewed, I got offered the job, and man, I jumped in feet first, and I'm learning a lot, man. The other ADs, if people don't know what ADs do, it's incredible. and the other local ADs, like, I lean on them every day. Every day I'm leaning on the other ADs. Paul helped me out get started, and my wife kind of pushed me like, yeah, let's give this a shot. Yeah. And I love it. I mean, there's some similarities to coaching. I mean, but how fortunate am I?
Like the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah, it's the shortest commute I've had in 30 years, and I get to be involved in athletics every day.
Every day.
Like if somebody would have said to me when I was 18, going to Wilkes University, like, hey, you're going to get a job at some point in time in your life and deal with athletics every day. It's a great time, We're sitting in my office right now. Kids stop at my door every day, and the kids at Towanda. Some of them knew me, the wrestlers knew me, but some didn't, and I'm learning a lot about sports.
And we're traveling quick.
Yeah, it's funny, the phone calls I'm getting, and people are congratulating me on Tawanda's football season. And I'm like, I'm just the AD, like I'm not coaching that team.
You're guilty by association.
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Like I get it. Like and it's become a part of me. Like I am so hooked. I had a blast watching soccer this year. I learned a lot. I haven't figured out offsides yet, but I'm learning so much about other sports and just things I've learned, and it's going to be a learning process. I know that, but it just, it's kind of falling right in there. And again, all my experiences, the people that I've coached with, the people that that I've been able to meet, whether it be at the coaching different levels, the players, God, I've had 2 NFL players coach with me, and just being able to suck out their knowledge is unbelievable. So, again, I know sometimes I get a lot of credit, but like when it came to coaching, I did a lot of plagiarism. I really did, and that's what coaching's all about. Yeah. So, it's just trying to steal from other people and make it fit in your own way, and And now I'm the athletic director at my alma mater, and I'm loving it.
And what a great fit you are. The first time I seen you as the AD, it was like you'd been here for 25, 30 years. It was just the greatest thing ever. Like,
Yeah, I think some of the stuff.
You came back home, thank God.
Yeah, and being present comes easy to me. Like, I love people, and I absolutely love. So far, besides the commute, because it is a short commute for me, but I absolutely love being around the kids. Like seeing the kids in some highs and some lows, and having them walk by every day and saying hello to me, like, it's refreshing. And yet, I don't have the stresses of coaches. Coaches have a lot of stress, and I'm telling you what, they take a lot of heat. Coaches take a lot of heat, and I don't care what sport it is. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm not going anywhere. That's for sure.
Well, that's a good thing. All right, now let's talk about wrestling.
Wrestling.
So, you're a high school kid. I remember you wrestled, 103 pounds.
Yeah, I was a little dude, for sure.
So how did that come into you being a high school wrestling referee?
Phew. There's a lot of different, as far as, first and foremost, I'll be perfectly honest. I was not very good. I wrestled on, at the time I was in high school, Towanda wrestling just kept getting better and better. Every year Towanda wrestling, so in the couple years that I was in the varsity lineup, we had some absolute beasts. Some guys that are on that all-time wins board downstairs.
Absolutely.
And guess I always wrestled where they weren't. Wherever Coach Sexton kind of needed that guy to go out there and try not to get pinned, that was me. I wasn't a very good wrestler, and I didn't love being in that room practicing. It was a grind. But I absolutely always loved the sport of wrestling. So as I believe it or not, some of the people I knew through athletics, when I was getting out of college, they were officiating. And it was like, all right.
So when you were in college, you had no idea that you wanted to be a wrestling referee or anything like that?
Not at all. Like, not at all. Like, I can remember my buddy Robbie Joyner one Christmas break coming back and saying, hey, Coach Sexton wants us to come up to the room and roll around. And I hated it, man. I was sick for a day. I was sore. And Coach Sexton, when I started teaching, he was like, how about coaching a little bit junior high? And I'm like, Coach, I have no desire to be in that room. Because again, it's just different. It's just different. And I got into officiating. And
how did you get into officiation? Did you say, I really love the sport of wrestling and I want to contribute, but what can I do besides roll around in this room to contribute?
It was, and I wish I could, it was just that. It was something else to do. It was something else to do.
Through the winter months to keep you busy, make
stay
a little
active,
bit of cash.
And believe it or not, officiating wrestling, like, even though officials aren't out there competing, it was like I was getting a front row seat for the ultimate competitions. I was getting a front row seat. And I just fell in love with it. I really did. I fell in love with officiating. Jim Sudo was probably as big a key to getting me involved with officiating as anybody. And then the local chapter I joined, there's a group of us that are all about the same age. And those, just a great support system. And then with my jumping around, I kind of got sidetracked officiating compared to them, because I had to change districts, so I kind of had to earn my keep everywhere I went. And then when I came back, it was like, hey, I'm back home, and I remember telling my wife, like, I had that goal of getting to Hershey. I wanted to officiate at Hershey. And, I told her for a couple years I'm going to take every event I can. And she didn't love that. She didn't love me driving late at night and stuff like that, but officiating just came natural to me. I felt like I was such a big part of another sport, and it was that big part was just I wanted to be fair and consistent to make those kids that were coming out there have the ultimate experience and make sure things were going to run right, and then the best guy was going to win, right? Like, I never had an ego officiating, and I over the years, one state tournament led to another. And then I had zero thought of ever taking it somewhere else. But then the district interpreter's job opened up. I got encouraged to do that, and that was kind of cool. Like I was like, all right, like I'm the interpreter for District 4.
Absolutely.
One
It's
of
a
the,
big deal.
I'll argue that it's the best AA district in the state of Pennsylvania. And I did that for a couple years, and then Doc Hosage, who was the state interpreter for 41 years, I think.
Boy.
He was the Pennsylvania state wrestling interpreter for over 40 years, and he finally was going to hang it up. And
how did your name get thrown in the hat to say, man, we think Jackie Young would be a great guy to do this?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly how, and it was I got 2 phone calls. And I'll tell you this. I got 2 phone calls, and then I was officiating a wrestling match at Troy. Lewisburg was wrestling at Troy, and Jim Schneider, the coach at Lewisburg, said, hey, you see that position's open, the state interpreter's job's open, you ought to put in for it. And I was like, Steve Gobble and Dave Campbell, 2 wrestling guys, they both former chairman of District 4, had called me and said, you should consider applying for this. And I had no idea what it entailed. None.
Were you thinking, man, I think these guys are crazy, but I'm going to throw my hat in and see where it goes?
You know, at the time, I was the vice president of the State Football Coaches Association, and I really didn't know what it was all entailing. But I put in for it. I had that conversation with my wife, and, you know, we always talked about checks and balances, and, you know, in my head, I was like, well, if maybe the opportunity's there, maybe I'll get myself out of the coaching association stuff that I was doing, and I love supporting the state in coaching, and I still do. I'm still a part, at least on the district level, but I interviewed for it, and holy smokes, I got to, and when you interviewed for it, you'd think it was like a, you know,
really president of the United States.
You would think it would be like a 6-figure job, you know, the whole 9 yards, and it's not. Trust me, you don't get paid much, but you know, I'm knee deep in wrestling, and I love it. I am really, really passionate about wrestling right now, and I'm passionate about making sure officiating in the state of Pennsylvania keeps up with the wrestling in the state of Pennsylvania. And again, I'll argue with anybody that Pennsylvania wrestling is the best.
And it's funny, talking to you, like even at the state tournaments when we run into you and we go eat and have a couple of drinks afterward. Like, you have such a passion. Like, you can tell, like, you're a football coach, but you could tell wrestling was, like, here.
It did.
Football was here and wrestling was here.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, like, especially once I retired from teaching and coaching, you know, I was like, I really enjoy the wrestling gig. I am passionate about the sport. I am a huge fan. Like, I love it. Like, I mean,
your eyes just light up when you talk about it. It's so great to see a dude that's almost 60 years old with the passion salivating over wrestling.
Yeah, you know, and you know, it's one of those things, and officials, I think, sometimes get, you know, beat up a little bit, and you know, officiating, you know, the brotherhood amongst officials. Like, you take our group of guys here in the Northern Tier. I mean, we're a bunch of brothers, and not one of us take ourselves seriously. We take what we do on the mat and our you know, we take that very serious. But we don't take who we are very serious. And you know what's really cool in football, you know, I coach some great kids, and I am friends with some players, former players of mine, that I wouldn't trade those friendships in for nothing. But like, getting to know wrestlers is so neat. Like, you know, they're all, you know, true wrestlers are different breeds than true football players, but you know, I will tell you, like, right now, wrestling, I have a passion, and you know, they put me in charge of officiating in the state of Pennsylvania. Like, you know, there's probably
like a kid in the candy store.
Yeah, like, you know, some of the people maybe I grew up with said, man, I can't believe Jack Young's in charge of anything, you know. But you know, I just have a passion about wrestling, and you know, like right now, you know, it's taken me places. I've been fortunate enough to get involved at the national level, and who knows where that'll take me. But you know, I had an opportunity the end of this summer to speak at the National Wrestling Coaches Association. I mean,
where was that held at?
That was in Florida. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and you know, it's like the National Federation asked me. You know, so it tells me that sometimes I'm doing some right things, and you know, I just try to be a good person, and you know, check my ego, and you know, make sure my character's where it belongs, and you know, like I said, I take it very seriously, and we have a great time. Like all my brethrens in officiating, and you know, I tell people all the time, you know, like, don't give officials a hard time, man. It's a tough job. I've known some guys that know the rules great. They love to officiate, and yet they'll tell you, like, never been able to get over that hump. And you know, just like some people have the knack to be able to officiate in any sport, some people don't. And you know, I'm just so passionate about it right now, and I've always been the kind of person that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it with
all in. You're going to slide your chips in.
I'm going to slide all my chips in there, and I'm really fortunate right now, and you know, I've got some friends through coaching and through wrestling that, like, I wouldn't trade in for the world. They're the greatest people.
And when we seen you down after one of the state matches, and we had a bite to eat and a couple drinks, like, we had watched some of the matches when we talked about them, and you said, well, when Matt asked you about the referee that did that Spencer Lee match, and you said, that's the guy right there. And man, Matt Herring's a pretty steadfast guy, and he was just like fanboying over him. It was so funny. It was just one of the greatest things ever to see. Like when you talk about wrestling, when you said, hey, he did that match, Matt would look like you when we talk about wrestling, like his eyes lit up and was like, oh,
I mean, you know, and everybody knows that match. That was Jeff Witherite, and you know, everybody knows that match. And I mean, you go to YouTube, and that thing's been viewed millions of times. And you know what? Like I told you, we have the best officials in the country, and he was the best official for the job that night.
Absolutely.
And, you know, just incredible. And like I said, officials, we have a ton of fun. We don't take ourselves seriously, but we take what we do very seriously. And you know, that's kind of just been my approach. You know, I have a passion for sports. I have a passion for trying to be a mentor and a leader. And you know, as long as I'm still having fun, I'm going to do it. And that's why I'm where I'm at right now. And I don't, you know, I don't take a lot of credit for it. The only thing I'll tell you is I've worked hard, and I've been fortunate enough to be around some great people. So that's for sure.
I've done, I got a 6-part refereeing series that I've done 5 parts for, and I'm waiting to get, this is a busy time of year in case you didn't know in football, so the referees tough to get a hold of, but I'm going to get a hold of them and do my 6th part. And it's funny that you talk about referees being like a brotherhood, because like I'm the press, so they kind of take me under their wing. And it's a great thing, because if I wasn't in the position I'm in, I would never understand like these referees and what they go through and who they are as people. It's just been such a great ride that I've been on, being able to do these interviews, talk to different people. It's just such a great thing, and to get to understand these referees and what they go through, and try to get people that are watching to go to PIAA.org and put your hat in the ring, be a football official, be a wrestling official.
Be any official. I tell people all the time, don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution. And the same thing, like that brother, and it's just, you know, and that might be why I'm so passionate about wrestling right now, because I had the same thing in coaching. I mean, some of the best friends in my life are people I've coached with. You know, because we've spent so much time together. We've worked hard together, that passion, and we've been through some highs and some lows, and they're some of my best friends. And you know, some of my other best friends, like from high school and stuff, they're always asking me questions, because you know, they went on to different careers themselves, successful people, and yet I think, at least they tell me sometimes, they're very envious of the career path I've chosen, and you know,
how it's turned out for you.
I just can't, you know, I love sitting down and talking to you. We could take this video forever, but you know, I'm just so fortunate to be around, you know, the people I'm around, you know, the whole 9 yards, and you know, like my wife will tell you, you know, if there's one thing she'll tell you about me, is that what I do, I'm very passionate about doing.
Well, we PA football news, we appreciate you sitting down and giving us time. And we love being able to hear you open up and tell the history of you and talk about the wrestling and all the stuff. Is just a great thing, because there's probably a lot of people out there in this area that will watch us and say, man, I always wondered about that, but I never got a chance to ask him. Like when I did Coach Quigg, like there's so many questions that I got to ask him that
I have a
in
few you
real
can
life-
ask Coach Quigg. Absolutely. I'd love to.
in real life I'd never get to ask him unless he sat down and did an interview with me, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then it's the same way with you. Like I wouldn't ask you some of the questions I ask you as a friend as I do with an interview. It's just a different deal.
Absolutely. Well, let's do it again in 5, 10, 20 years.
Absolutely, and we'll
All
see
right.
where you're at in
Absolutely, that'd
the
be great.
PIAA Wrestling Grand Poobah.
Grand Poobah. All right. I love it. I
All
love
right,
it.
man, thank you for your time, and for PA football, we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
All right, so thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time.